although there are all kinds of issues that I care about and all kinds of issues that I intend to work on, the single most important thing I can do is to help in any way I can prepare the next generation of leadership to take up the baton and to take their own crack at changing the world.
That was former President Barack Obama at the University of Chicago in April, his first in just a handful of public appearances since he left office in January. Our next guest says while the president did deserve a break from the spotlight, the country needs him to start speaking out again. Caroline Randall Williams writes in the New York Times a piece titled, "President Obama, Where Are You?" It reads in part, "President Obama, now is the time to start talking. I recognize and respect your deliberate approach to navigating these fraught times, but this relentless subtlety has become wearisome. Mr. Obama, now is not the time to follow the keep quiet rules while the new administration plays moral equivocator to a much aghast nation. It's time for you to come back." I love that after you posted on Twitter about the violence in Charlottesville, Virginia, you set a record for the most liked tweet, but my joy at the news of your weighing in was complicated by your using a quotation, even one from Nelson Mandela. "I look to you for your good words. I'll keep waiting because I know they will be worth it, but where are they?" And author Caroline Randall Williams joins us now from Nashville. Caroline, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Fascinating column. George W. Bush famously had a policy and still has a policy. He doesn't come out publicly and condemn the man sitting in the Oval Office because he knows how tough the job really is. Why do you think it's different this time?
I think it's different this time for a lot of reasons, but I think one of the reasons I think it's different is we've never been in a climate where, you know, the turnover has been so rapid. People in authority positions are continuing to question the president and what's going on Capitol Hill and in the White House 8 months into the presidency in ways that make us feel very unsettled. And so I think that, you know, passing on the baton, when you do that, you assume that the person who you've passed it to is going to carry on running the race in the same manner or within the same parameters that you had done it. I mean, I think that that is not happening here.
So President Obama privately is not happy with what's been happening in the country in the 7 months since he left office. But what do you think he would accomplish by going out and, let's say, making a speech, something like Mitt Romney did during the campaign, condemning the sitting president of the United States? Do you think there's a risk that that would further tear apart the country?
So here's the thing. I don't think that I'm not asking for condemnation. What I'm asking for is some insight, you know, from those of us who are sitting here bewildered, some insight into what we can do from somebody who knows how the machines of politics work more informedly. Because I am a private citizen who tries to be civic-minded and engaged, but I'm interested in knowing from somebody who really has a sense of how things do get done, what he thinks we need to be doing. Because there's also so much language of chaos that's coming down from Washington and from the media right now, and I want to know what his take on some of that is, because I think the genuine sense of, I mean, I wrote panic in my article, and I don't know that panic might be a bit extreme, but there is a sense of unrest that I'm really invested in understanding and knowing if the scale of my discomfort is reasonable, and I think that he's somebody that I would look to and trust his insight in that.
Caroline, John Heilman has a question for you.
Hey, Caroline, I think you speak for millions of Democrats who would like to hear more from President Obama right now, but I'm trying to gauge a little bit your tone. I run into liberals and former supporters of the president all the time who are almost at this point a little angry at him for not engaging more, who feel like he's being in some way irresponsible for not taking him, for not being more actively involved in the civic dialogue right now, for not taking on Donald Trump. You seem to be like you kind of wistfully want him to be sort of a pundit here, like you want to hear what he has to say, his take on views, but do you feel in some way kind of almost agitated or angry about the fact that the president is on the sidelines at this point in the Trump administration?
Well, what I will say is, you know, yes, I'm frustrated because I do think that when, you know, As I said, I only ever voted for Barack Obama until November of 2016. I was not able to vote before that because I hadn't yet turned 18 years old. So I was raised up in the political space where he was the president. And, you know, he's saying that he wants to enable young people to take on their civic responsibilities. Part of that is coming back in and giving us the tools to navigate a situation that we were not prepared to navigate. There's talk about the 25th Amendment being pulled out. The president after Obama being a president where people are questioning his fitness in genuine terms is not a normal circumstance in which to move into your next chapter of navigating a political space. So I do think that it is his responsibility to come and talk to us, actually.
Noah?
Caroline, Noah Rothman with Commentary Magazine. The president, over the course of his presidency from 2009 to 2017, lost 1,042 Democrats their seats. We all remember what happened with Congress. We all remember what happened with the governorships. 25 states are in 100% Republican control. The president made 150 down-ballot endorsements in legislative races where you have the Democratic farm team. The result was they lost chambers in Iowa, Minnesota, and Kentucky. The Democrats are already engaged in the Trump era. Republicans are a little discouraged. Do you think that getting President Obama off the seat might be counterproductive? Might the president getting off the ref's chair engage Republicans in a way they're currently not engaged?
I don't think that we can be afraid of. I don't think that we can be afraid of engaging with people of opposing views. I think that part of, you know, stepping back and not having these conversations is what has bred things like what happened in Charlottesville, you know, things that we haven't seen in generations because we haven't pushed all of this up and out. There is no way around this. We have to go through it. So I think that we have to have the conversations.
Caroline, Randall Williams, really appreciate you being on with us this morning from Nashville to talk about your piece. It's in the New York Times. Everybody can check it out. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Governor Dean, what do you make of the idea that President Obama needs to be doing more? Would that be helpful in this moment?
Well, from a political point of view, no. You only have one president at a time, and to violate that would actually give Trump a target at which he could, you know, carry on. Trump loves to have a convenient whipping person, and that would be Obama. There is a way to do this, but you have to really thread the needle. The other thing, I think Caroline's generation is fantastic, but they have to make their own way now. I mean, it's our job to coach. It's our job to lift up. I think the former president is trying to do that, as are a lot of us I'm hoping the next presidential candidate is under 50, or at least under 55 in our party. We have got to transfer this over to the next generation. The Trump election, I think, was in a sense, their generation's Edmund Pettus Bridge or Kent State. And their principles have been violated as a whole generation. But they're going to have to fight through this by themselves. Obama can't do it. He is not the president anymore. You only have one president at a time. And I think if he gets into this big time, he makes it easier for Trump, not harder.
Do you worry about something we've talked a lot about on this table, which is progressives and Democrats making some kind of assumption in their minds that Trump is so bad as a president, this is their point of view, that they're going to win 2020 just on the basis of that?
Absolutely not. I think we might win 2018 that way. We will not beat an incumbent president without.
But that's what I mean. But you worry about that perception.
I don't worry
Democrats.
about that. I don't talk to anybody who thinks we're going to walk in 2020. They're mostly agonizing about which one of a gazillion candidates that we have that are all great.
It's more than that.
But you'd like the field,
Is that
though?
the Hui principle of the Constitution?
Exactly.
Jonathan Turley made my morning with the constitutional principle.
Underlining your Hui
yes.
principle. All right, Governor Dean, thanks so much. Always good to have you on set. Coming up, we're tracking Hurricane Harvey. Its sights set on Texas. It's expected to be the strongest storm to make landfall in the U.S. in more than a decade. Bill Cairns joins us with the latest track, and it's a long one. Plus, former Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson joins us here on the set in New York. And the Trump administration says the president is serious about shutting down the government if Congress does not fund his proposed border wall. And what about the part where Mexico was supposed to pay for it? Morning Joe is coming right back on a Friday morning.